Who's the most person at your workplace? Story 1. I work at a Chinese restaurant. His name is Young. He can cleanly crack 2 eggs at a time in one hand. He can carve a carrot into a dragon. He uses a meat cleaver to shave seriously. I've seen him do it. He keeps in his car. He can slice 2 buckets of onions in 15 minutes without shedding a tear. To top that off, he knows Kung Fu. Kung Fu story. One time, one of our distributors came in the back door to the kitchen and started hassling my boss about some order that he refused to pay for because all the vegetables were rotting. It was gross, so he starts to raise his voice a bit. That turns to yelling and swearing. Now customers are turning heads. Meanwhile, Young is watching calmly in the background, arms folded as if nothing was really going on. Finally, the guy starts throwing kitchen utensils off the table. Then Young steps in one quick motion, I kid you not, he steps forward and does the Chuck Norris jab to the back of the neck. Guy passes out cold. Young grabs his body before it hits the floor and drags him out the back door. I quickly turn back to my dishes and pretended like I didn't see anything. Edit: here is the menu. It needs to be updated a bit. And here's an article on beer and wine pairings with my boss. I'll see if I can get a picture of Young for you guys. Story 2, there's a guy at work who's got shrapnel in his face and is missing a finger. I don't know the story there. Last Friday, he looked at his watch, stood up in the middle of a meeting with a client, and said, well, my new floor's paid off, and left. We haven't seen him since. Story 3, I worked at a no-frills Canadian grocery store, and I worked with Carl. We were unloading dog food from the top shelf of one of the aisles and dropped a bag, causing it to explode and sending little dog food pellets that are more like marbles than marbles, and an elderly woman 2 aisles over falls and breaks her hip. We run over as fast as we can while trying to avoid falling ourselves, and Carl notices that the lady isn't breathing. The fall must have caused some damage. He immediately throws me his phone, tells me to call 911, and proceeds to give her CPR for 45 minutes. We called him the lifesaver ever since. The lady came back in 2 to 3 months later and asked for Carl. He happened to be working that day. She walked up to him and asked if he knew who she was. He replied that he did and that he was glad she is okay. She then gave him a hug and tucked something into his pocket. He didn't notice till the end of the shift that she had tucked into his pocket a check for $3,000 with a note that read, "Thank you for saving my life. I hope you didn't get into any trouble. Take the money and spend it." He cried for about 10 minutes as he was about to go to college and had not saved enough to afford the tuition. He's the most bad guy I know. Story 4, I work at a Subway in a local mall. I have a coworker who is about 5'5", if that. He's of Mexican descent, but speaks pretty good English. He was helping a Puerto Rican guy one day. In case you didn't know, Puerto Ricans and Mexicans really hate each other. The customer asks for avocado, and at this time, my coworker tells him that it costs $1 extra, and asks if that's all right. The guy responds with, "Yeah, what do you think I have, money?" In a very demeaning tone. My coworker responds, "I wasn't trying to make any kind of statement. You don't have to be smug." At this point, it turns into a full-blown argument, with the Puerto Rican guy yelling expletives across the counter. He challenges him to fight. At this point, my coworker calmly walks to the computer, punches out, takes his shirt off, jumps over the counter, and walks out of the restaurant and out of the mall doors. The Puerto Rican guy follows him, and at this point, I saw the most bad fight I've ever witnessed. The Puerto Rican must have been at least 60 pounds heavier and 6 or so inches taller, and my coworker just completely demolished him in every way. I've never seen anyone move quicker. It took him all of about 5 punches before the other guy was on the ground bleeding all over. Israel comes back inside, but takes his things and goes home. The next day, mall security came by and told him that there were no charges being pressed, but they need to know if anything was done to jeopardize his job. They asked him if he was punched in at the time of the fight, or if he had his uniform on. My coworker answered no to each question, which was the truth. They confirmed with people who were in the restaurant at the time, and he got off without any punishment. The other guy ended up with 2 broken teeth and a broken cheekbone. TLDR, my coworker completely beat the other guy much bigger than he. Story 5, I used to work with a retired Army bomb disposal guy. He was in the Army in the 1960s. When anybody asked him about his past, he just used to say, before they invented bomb disposal robots, I was the robot. Story 6, I worked as a roulette croupier at a casino for a few years, and there was a bunch of bouncers who took care of the cheaters and thieves. They were all massive, but all paled in comparison to the largest one. I've been accused of making this description up, but believe me, it is neither fake nor exaggerated. His real name was Justice Jones. He was about 68, probably close to 260 pounds of muscle, shaved head with one blue and one dark eye, and wore weightlifting gloves at all times. Even when off shift, he was also surprisingly well-spoken, which added to my belief that he was actually a superhero. Unfortunately, every fight he was present and ended as soon as he showed up, but I think it's pretty clear he could edit grammar. Story 7, this isn't my boss, but my friend's boss, Vietnam veteran with 8 confirmed kills, but probably many more than that. One time someone asked him what the most horrible thing he had ever done with his hands was. He just burst out laughing and said, "Let's just say I've seen the other side of an eyeball." Story 8, this reminds me of that 4chan post where the guy goes into the coffee shop every day. This one customer was to the girl at the front counter, and the guy pulls out a sword out of his cane and tells it to GTFO. Story 9, at the movie theater I worked at in college. We had this ticket taker named Clyde. Clyde was 88 and a World War II Navy vet with tattoos of blurry naked chicks on his forearms. He flirted with every attractive woman that came in, even if she was on a date or married. He would also introduce cute girls to me and the other guys on staff. And he could do it all in a way that was charming and smooth. Clyde got a lot of ushers at that theater laid. When he passed away, we named one of the auditoriums after him. Story 10, I used to work at this pizza place when I was in university. The owner boss was this big Serbian guy, looked more Russian and sounded it. He was bald, tall, and solid muscle, and seriously scary. He would pick up pizzas that weren't done right and throw them across the kitchen and watch them hit the wall and slide down to the floor and glare at everyone, daring them to go clean it up. One day, one of the drivers, Tony, call him, comes back, and he's like these people, they don't answer door, they don't answer phone, and puts their order back under the heat lamps in case they call wondering where the pizza is. They call back about 10 minutes later. So we tack on another delivery fee and send the pizza out. It comes back again. These, what are they doing? Answer your phone. So we leave the pizza up. These people call again, and my boss tells them to come get their pizza if they want it. These people show up, and he wants them to pay for the 2 deliveries we made and take their now cold pizza. She's screaming at him because she wants him to make a new pizza, and he's just standing there with his arms folded. He finally gets fed up and, "Go get out of my store, you stupid, no pizza for you." He's obviously never seen Seinfeld and didn't understand why everyone in the restaurant was in stitches. He's also chased an unsuccessful robber down the street with a pizza shovel. Story 11, Dana. Let me introduce you to Dana. When my boss was going around asking people if they had any floss, Dana lifted up her shirt, pulled out her thong string, and said, "Yeah, right here," and she still works there. Dana is 45, and she guy's 10 years younger than her while maintaining a relationship with a married firefighter. She's also managed to make friends with this married firefighter's wife. Dana is also a bodybuilder, has legs for a mile, wears short skirts around the office, and you better pray to God she doesn't kick you in the nuts. Dana has openly told me she squirts. Dana rides ATVs and dirt bikes on the weekend, and just came back from a trip where she broke her forearm in 3 places. Raddest I've ever met. This dude I work with at a power company that works mainly on a seniority system. He has been around a long time, so he gets away with anything. He gets up and farts anytime he wants to and high-fives people over them. His advice, which is usually pretty good, usually consists of saying, "Fuck it. Who cares? It's the company's money. I don't give a..." When the boss comes in, we all hate him and tells us what we are doing for the day. He always ends by asking him what he has lined up. Normally his response is "fuck all." He actually does whatever his job is. He just sincerely does not give a... Story 12, back when I was in high school, I worked at a par 3 golf course and driving range. My boss and owner of the place was in his 70s. Anyway, some guy wrote a bad check for a bucket of, which was something like $6. My boss takes the $6 check and drives 45 minutes to the dude's house, knocks on the door, and asks for $6 in cash. It turns out that the guy was throwing a dinner party with his family, and as soon as my boss showed up, everyone pulled out their wallets to try and come up with $6 in change. Definitely a yeah moment. Story 13, my boss. Grumpy, 80-year-old German. The guy refused to join the Nazi youth till they threatened to educate his parents. Even then, he got them to send him on supply runs, which he pilfered and gave to hungry families. 2 years ago, had a quadruple, if the how you spell it, bypass. Last year, had to have laser eye surgery, but because of the heart medicine, antiseptic. When the nukes fall, ITLL be cockroaches, and him, that survives. Story 14, this guy Ed. He's 82 years old. Just spending his retirement doing a little menial labor 3 days a week. He's for 2 reasons. Number 1, he fought in the U.S. Air Force, and 2, rumor has it he has a massive, apparently, a coworker accidentally came across him taking near some bushes and came back into the shop immediately afterwards. My boss said he was white as a ghost and said he had to be at least a foot long. Otherwise, he's a man of few words, but every other one is. Story 15, guy's name is James. He's around 65 and north of 250 pounds. And has a lush, full-face beard, the very image of a hillbilly mountain man. 2, about once a week, he'll reinforce his image by sitting in the middle of our giant cafeteria to play his banjo. For whatever reason, whenever he does this, he wears a very elaborate kilt. Furthermore, I work at a software company in the heart of Yuppieville, and this man is famous throughout the company for producing the highest volume of code by a significant margin. TLDR, hillbilly regularly plays a banjo in public while wearing a kilt, and codes like a bat outa. Story 16, at the pizza place where I used to work, there's a driver who I consider the most person I've ever met. He's a scrappy old Italian guy who I was very surprised to find out is in his late 60s, who we'll call Jimmy. I remember one time, I was in the store when Jimmy came back after being robbed. He just walked in the front door with a giant welt on his face where had been pistol whipped and sulked over to the computer to check in. I asked him what had happened to his face, and he told me that had been jumped by two guys with a gun in an apartment complex around the corner from our store. They'd hit him with the gun, but lost control of it in doing so, sending the gun spinning into the bushes nearby. The two guys panicked and ran. Jimmy chased them for a bit, but gave up and came back to try to find the gun in the bushes. When he got back to the store, he was angry not because he had been robbed and had a giant bump forming on his cheekbone, but because he hadn't been able to find the gun, which had hoped to be able to sell. Story 17, working at a grocery store doesn't leave much room for badassery. Everybody is just miserable. This one cashier used to swipe his Randall's card instead of the customer's. He raked in like 1,000,000 Randall's points things and got a couple 100 gallons of free gas. Went on for about 3 months before he was fired. Story 18, a black cook I used to work with at a regular bar and grill was named Mike and maybe 35 or so. He worked at this where I could barely stand dishwashing for 5 hours, from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. each day, preparing food and cooking. Somehow, he always had a smile on his face. Mike had a few, especially moments he'll never forget, creating the Ebonics word of the day, the first of which was Yao Ming. He would then provide a sentence on the whiteboard. I ain't feeling today. Yao Ming. I was in the kitchen one day with him helping with fries when I asked if he had ever messed with people's food. Mike likes to joke with people, and this whole time I've been joking around, but he got extremely serious and stared me down for a good 5 seconds before saying, "You don't ever with another man's food," constantly referred to his daughter, whom I think is the reason behind his abominable work hours and constant happiness. God, that's awesome. He's 10x a man. I am one last thing. He'd take shits in the bathroom, conveniently located right next to the hot kitchen, and leave the door open to stink up the whole place while laughing and trolling everyone. Story 19, I used to spend summers working at my dad's construction company. His business partner, Frank, was an absolute bear of a man. I'd say 66 and 300 pounds easily. He was also the nicest guy you'd ever meet. I mentioned to my dad how looks can be deceiving, and he started laughing and told me about Frank's past. In the late 70s, he was busted on a felony drug charge for pot. Ended up getting sent to Folsom, I believe. Anyways, Frank was a monster then, but scared shitless, had heard all the stories about prison, and was determined that he wouldn't be taken advantage of. So, the very first night there, a Hispanic gang member attempted to attack Frank with a shiv while they were walking back to the cells after dinner. Frank grabbed the guy, picked him up, and threw him over the railing. They were on the 3rd story. Apparently, the gang member's spine broke in the fall, and he spent the rest of his life paralyzed. Frank ended up getting sent to San Quentin and served his entire 8-year sentence there. But, as he told me when I asked if the story was true, he said no one ever messed with him again after that. Story 20, I intern at a consultancy for oil gas companies. This dude named Jag works here, comes to work Monday to Thursday in jeans and a t-shirt, and then on Friday wears formals. He's about 40 years old. Lead process engineer, 2 steps from the top of the hierarchy. Dude smart, as in doesn't take from nobody. Does whatever he wants. Motherfuck. My lead engineer. He's one of the original programmers for Abe's Exodus. I love that game. Story 21, I used to work with a guy named Bear, who looked very, very similar to Hunter Thompson, also dressed like him. This was at an engineering company where most of the guys wore dress shirts and pants every day, if not ties. He came in wearing jeans and a cowboy hat every day. He had never even graduated high school, but he was a self-taught designer engineer. He wasn't technically allowed to sign the packages without a fancy piece of paper from university, but he still did a lot of the work. And the funny thing is he was one of the best at his job out of everyone, even over the guys who had gotten their masters and PhDs. The best part is he just didn't give a, we would be a meeting about a project with the higher up brass for BPAK, and he would just be like, well, fellas, we're basically up creek. He was pretty much awesome. His name is Bill, and he rode a zebra through the halls today. Story 22, since I'm 6 and 200 pounds, I did not think of myself as small until I started working at a tractor dealership. I'm the smallest person in the shop. While all my coworkers are interesting, one definitely takes the cake. He met his wife in the hospital after he was shot in the head with a shotgun. They were aiming at someone else who dodged. He has had a tractor tire from a Kasei Steiger fall on him and was back to work in less than a week. He is known for using a torch and sledgehammer to fix most problems. TLDR, I work with a man who uses a chainsaw to install a door in his house. Story 23, I am. But my coworkers will never know it unless the zombie apocalypse starts while I'm at work, and they'll all discover that I've been training, and I save them all by kicking zombie. Story 24, back at my last job. There's a group of guys who would dress up as pirates for fun, not for dorky role-playing, mind you, but mostly it was a bunch of entertainment industry guys who were costumers, blacksmiths, effects artists, etc. So a couple times a year, these guys all got together and looked like they were straight off the set of Pirates of the Caribbean, with great outfits, masterfully crafted swords, downing rum they had made themselves in a rather impressive pirate-themed camp. Sometimes they would come to the office in full costume for kicks or to show off the latest pieces they had made. Fun people. One of the guys, Scott, was also into martial arts. He had learned several different styles, was a black belt, and who knows what. For being a decade or two older than myself, he was still pretty cut. But among the styles he claimed to have learned was ninjutsu. Not that I could verify that fact, I'm not a ninja, but he was serious about that sort of thing, that son of a bitch was both a pirate and a ninja. Story 25, seeing how everyone is telling the story of badassery. I will go on record with one that is in its own way, although not the tone of this thread. My great-uncle. If you look in the post, I spoke of the bayonet he used in World War II. I asked one time if he had ever killed anyone while he was in the service. At the time that I asked over 15 years ago, I was not wise enough to know not to ask these things. He just kind of looked at me with this very worried and truthfully sorry look. I was to find out later when he talked to me that it was because he honestly felt that one day I would have to do the things that he had done, and it hit him very hard. The idea that I would have to kill, be killed, or experience what he experienced. Later he told me that he did kill many people while in the service during the war. That was not glorious, or was just being put into something that was bigger than him. Bigger than any one person, group, or nation. It was about what was right. Then he stopped and said, but there is nothing right or wrong about killing a man. Just the ending of a life that was not yours to end. They deserved better, and got me. He then told me a story about getting stuck behind the lines and having to work his way back to his company. Crawling from foxhole to foxhole, trench to trench, over a 2-day period. This amazed me, as he said he only made about 12 miles during that whole time, as there was gas above the trenches and foxholes, and you had to hold your breath as you travel from one to the other. All the while troops are about, but you try not to get close to any of them, and only try to move at night while they could not see you. Once he got to what he thought was the middle of the engagement, he made a bear-crawled sprint to a trench and rolled into it, just as a single Nazi ground troop rolled in directly across from him about 10 feet in front of him, both of them raising their rifles and taking aim. Frozen in time, is what he said. Just standing there, both of them looking each other in the eye, both of them locked in on the other, both of them knowing that if either pulled the trigger they would both be dead, neither of them moving, blinking, flinching. Apparently they stayed this way until he slowly reached his hand out, palm up, as if to say wait. They gave him what would look like the thumbs up sign, turning it 45 degrees to the right and motioning to the right. The Nazi did the same, but to the left, and they both exited the trench without firing a shot. He told me it was the defining moment of the war for him. 2 scared kids about to kill each other. He was out of ammo. Story 26, Dale. Exit-in stalker at a galvanized sheet metal factory. Recently had a hit called out on him by an ex-best friend. He gets a text saying that they're coming to his house to get him. Dale's buddy, Jim, also gets a text saying after Dale gets it, you're next. What does Dale do? Has his wife and kids sit around upstairs when the sun goes down. In the meantime, he sits outside on the porch with a Mountain Dew. Dale has been stabbed, sliced, hit with several baseball bats in the head, yet has an undefeated fight record. He likes to mind his own business and provide for his family, but due to his intimidating stature, he's seen as a challenge for punks at bars and on the street to have a go at. A simple man, though, Jim arrives at Dale's house with the idea of protecting the family in mind. Dale is just chillin'. A guy shows up, a scout that acted as a lure for Jim. Jim follows him up the street to see who it was. In the meantime, around the other side of the porch, a man armed with a shotgun hops to the stairs of his porch. Dale stands up, finishes his Mountain Dew, and walks up to the guy. The shotgun man racks a shell as Dale stands inches from his face. Jim shows up, chasing the scout from before, and shotgun man panics, and as Dale put it, was about to aim at him. Dale lunges for the attack, but shotgun man makes a run for it after the scout guy. Jim hops into a car, calls 911, and trails them to a parking garage where they get busted. This story contains information from the newspaper, write-up, and Dale first-hand account from our lunch break on Tuesday. Story 27 in my office. It's definitely the Romanian cleaning lady, utterly fearless. One day, a couple guys came literally jumping out of the bathroom, sputtering about some huge spider in there. We're all like, yeah, okay, huge spider, right? Romanian cleaning lady waltzes in and comes out a few seconds later, holding a spider as big as her admittedly small hand. She's holding it by its body, and the legs are pulsing in and out. She says to us, this nothing. Why so scared? Don't think it wasn't poisonous or anything. It wasn't a tarantula, just a very big, ugly brown spider. But the way she was holding it made me think she wouldn't have a problem with tarantulas or black widows either. Story 28, I think the most name in our system goes to Shane Nails, and the most current employee goes to this dude in communications who put wallpaper in his cube and created a cube hallway sport with paper that I don't fully understand for when their director is out. Most ex-employee is either the chick who got wasted at the company Christmas event in 2007 and was fired for flashing the CEO during his speech, or my old manager, who is a Vietnam vet and would always come in and dazzle us with his badasseries and generally just bask in his awesomeness. Story 29, I work in a lab with this crazy old bald guy. Even though we don't really agree on much, I have to respect some of the crazy he's done. I'm not sure where he's from, but sometimes he goes by some German name, so that might be it. I've heard that before he worked here, he blew up the office of his old boss. He's managed to get me out of a bunch of tight spots. Actually, I hope he can stay around longer, but he keeps saying that he's only working to support his family. He has cancer or something. Shit's confusing, yo. Story 30, one of the senior partners of my law firm had a kid by 11th grade, which she dropped out of before she finished, and now is a top attorney in her field and makes millions a year. That's about it, though. The rest are pretty boring. Edit, she had 2 kids by the time she was an undergrad. I had heard this story without many details from coworkers, but a little Googling set me straight. Hey Race, an in-depth PDF article about her. Story 31, there's this guy I used to bum around. Both of us asking tourists for spare change on the same street. And being homeless, you get to know the other bums around you. I suppose they'd be my coworkers. Anyway, he was about 50 with sun-leathered skin, and he always wore the same necklace every day. It was a simple black string with a single claw hanging as a pendant. One day, us bums got together over a drink, and someone asked him why he always wore it. He explained that he was once hunting as a kid with his grandfather nearby, when a mountain lion pounced out from some bushes and began mauling his chest. He's on the ground trying to fight off the beast when he hears a single gunshot and watches as the cat slumps onto the ground. Then his grandfather runs up and gets him to a hospital. Nobody believes him, so he rips off his shirt and exposes, clear as day, a series of scars radiating across his chest in every direction. We're all stunned into silence. Meanwhile, he takes that opportunity to chug the rest of our vodka and skulk off to his camping spot. The last time I saw him, he was engaged in a fight with another bum over a passed-out homeless prostitute named Cherry. The other bum apparently maligned her nature. They were drunk off their gourds and using empty liquor bottles as weapons. Only they could hardly stand. They both swung their improvised weapons at each other simultaneously. Both miss and fall to the ground. Then Mountain Lion Bum says, "Good fight," and they pass out next to each other. Story 32, I work with a Sherpa. He's climbed Everest twice. He speaks 7 languages. He has a cookery collection. He makes the best katsu, Don, you'll ever eat. Edit, he climbed Everest twice, guys. He's a Sherpa. Also, he's one of the friendliest, funniest guys I know, and just generally awesome. I know I'm 15 hours late, but I win the thread. Story 33, a fellow neurobiology grad student I work with is 65, has a beard, drives a motorcycle, plays electric guitar, does cage fighting in his spare time, using Krav Maga. He learned while overseas, and every week a different chick with the biggest I've ever seen, and each one is bigger than the last. Wait, that's just me in my fantasy land. You reality, we have a volunteer who fought in WW2, helped start the Special Forces in Korea, and fought in Vietnam with the Special Forces. Epic, still volunteers regularly despite being nearly 90 years old. Story 34, my ex-boss friend Buddy is a 60-something-year-old guy with Snow White hair styled like Elvis, was but longer. It's quite pretty. Really, he was an orphan, endured a lot as a child in different orphanages and boys' homes. He was shuffled around between several facilities. At 15 years old, Buddy was homeless in southern Florida, and he and his dog Smokey were robbing banks with some success, and were wanted by the FBI. When he got busted, they shipped Buddy up to D.C., to a facility without the dog. He was a very bad discipline case by this time, and they had a hard time dealing with him as nothing seemed to affect him. All he cared about was that dog. The papers got a hold of the story, and there was a popular movement to reunite Buddy with Smokey. They searched animal control or whatever it was back then in Florida, eventually located Smokey and flew him to D.C. to try and be able to reach a tough kid who didn't have one friend in the world. I suppose it worked. Buddy's because he came from absolutely nothing and has made an amazing life. He has made and lost 3 fortunes. He has worked event security with the Hells Angels on horseback. He has been clothing designer, flower shop owner, restaurateur, poet, artist, sign company owner, professional musician, amateur boxer, and bar owner. His favorite endearment is dumbass, and pretty much favorite word is motherfucker. He does not hesitate to fight men 25 years younger and kick there, and he treats women like they're kittens. The dude is cool. Story 35. My old boss was from Germany. After handing the job to a friend when I moved out, I received a text. So, am I supposed to laugh when he makes a U-boat joke, or what? Story 36. My boss at a talent agency. He is 62, gay, and is the loudest, most obnoxious, doesn't give a what people think about him, man alive. Today, he told the owner of a casting office she was and hung up. Something like this happens about once a day. Story 37. This professor who teaches chemistry at the UW used to work for some top secret CIA when something happened and he lost all his memory. He still has trouble with short-term memory. He needs to write everything down on a notepad or else he won't remember what happened 10 minutes ago. He still gets calls from the CIA every week or so to check if he remembers anything, because if he does, they got to take him away. Story 38. I went to HS with two guys, Matt and Sean, and we were all friends that went into the Army, and I went into medicine. The first Gulf War happens, and they have been in for 3 years. The war comes and goes. Matt comes, but Sean didn't. Sean turns out has 10 to 15 vision. They made him a sniper and dropped him in before the war took off. Sean's body count was 216, I found out from Matt. I bumped into Sean years later when his mom died. I flew home out of respect, and to see my family too. Sean works for government contracts now. That is all he told me. Story 39. My dishwasher is the most guy I work with. The name on his checks is Armando. He speaks maybe 4 words of English. I've never seen him falter in his duties. He's always on time, and I can make him laugh without speaking any Spanish, though. I do speak a little. Story 40. I can't speak personally about my job, since I'm a software engineer in an office with 5 other people, but the owner of a restaurant I frequent has to be the biggest I've ever seen. His name is something Greek. Not sure, but we call him Jimmy. Randomly, when we come to place our order, he'll yell at us from the kitchen to hang around. He runs out, checks around for extra customers, his wife, and then just riddles off the funniest, most jokes I've ever heard. The only time his wife was around, he just gave her a stern glance, and she moved into the next room. When he's not doing that, we catch him drinking straight from an ouzo bottle. He'll just flip a pizza together, walk out front, smash a few gulps of ouzo, throw off a wink, and back to work. He piled through half that bottle in 30 minutes once. Story 41. Posting this on behalf of a non-Redditor. My friend is a pharmacist, and when he was interning, he worked with this Korean guy. Cool guy. Generally agreeable, but you never with him ever. For one thing, he never took from the customers, which is a huge problem in pharmacies. He was always carrying and wasn't afraid to let people know it. And being Korean, he served his mandatory time in the South Korean Army. During that time, he came upon a seemingly wounded North Korean near the border. When he went to check on him, the guy stabbed him in the gut. Our man didn't hesitate to cap him with unerring accuracy, then walked back to his CO and told him what happened like nothing happened, and he was totally fine. CO immediately told him to get treated, and he now has a massive scar from the incident. Again, you know what this guy? Story 42. I had a machining class last semester with a nearly 300-pound dude who had a ZZ Top beard, was covered in tattoos, whose legal name was Mike Thunder, and who restored vintage Ford Broncos for a living. Story 43. I work with Jimmy. No one knows how old he is because he has 2 IDs. One says he's 65, the other 75. Let me start by saying he has a tattoo on his arm to say crazy mother. He's about 57 and has a huge belly, but he's not fat in the regular sense. He has a scar from the bottom of his chin straight up his face and back down the back of his head. He has some sort of lip cancer from smoking. He still smokes. He's a diabetic. I spent a full day with this guy and share a hotel room. He went the entire day without food and or insulin, which he does not use, ever. All he had for breakfast, lunch, and dinner was a bottle of Coca-Cola and coffee. He's never eaten anything green or Chinese. He calls Chinese food gooky gooky. We work in the motorcycle industry. I've seen Jimmy tell countless biker gang members Hell's Angels, Mongols, Banditos, etc. to off, and that they are a bunch of S. He says it to their faces and conchus, taunting them when they turn their backs. Some people I work with have gotten Jimmy to eat so much pie in one sitting is criticized. When he went to the bathroom, he refused hospital care, so they brought a doctor to him. He has no home, apartment, or objects. He lives from hotel room to hotel room. When he is on the road, he uses no suitcases, just a cardboard box with and stained tidy whiteys, or as we call them, saggy yellows, and socks. I watched him as he told police officers to off and mind their own business. They were doing nothing but standing in a place. He didn't like the stories I have heard and seen about Jimmy are many and hard to believe. I will write more if people are interested.